أهلا بيكم معانا النهاردة. هنغوص شوية في عالم تشارلز ديكنز، وتحديدا الفصل الثاني من روايته المشهورة Great Expectations. الفصل ده بيعرفنا على الدنيا اللي بيب الصغير عايش فيها. أخته السيدة جو جارجري، الست القوية دي اللي ربته بالإيد، وجوزها الحداد الطيب جو جارجري. الأحداث كلها في بيتهم الخشب جنب الورشة، والجو متكهرب خصوصا بعد ما بيب قابل السجين الهربان ده في المقابر. مهمتنا بقى نفهم ازاي البيت ده والشخصيات دي بالذات بتأثر على بيب وهو لسه صغير، وخصوصا مع السر الرهيب اللي مخبيه. خلينا نبدأ بالسيدة جو أخته. بيب بيوصفها يعني بصراحة وصف قاسي جدا، مش بس شكلها اللي هو طويلة ورفيعة ووشها محمر ولابسة مريالة ناشفة كده، لا، الأهم معاملتها. دايما بتزعق وبتشتكي وبتستخدم عصاية ليها اسم كمان، تيكلر، عشان تضربه.
بالظبط. السيدة جو دي مش مجرد ست شريرة وخلاص، يعني ديكنز بيرسم بيها صورة للإحباط للست اللي ظروفها خانقاها في الزمن ده. فالبيت نفسه بقى عامل زي ما يكون متنفس لغضبها ده. وحتة انه يفكر انها ممكن تستحمى بمبشرة الجبنة بدل الصابون دي لوحدها يعني عبقرية في وصف قد ايه هي ناشفة وقاسية.
والملاحظ ان قسوتها دي مش بس على بيب، دي بتطول جو نفسه جوزها، كأن الموضوع أكبر من مجرد تربية بيب.
أكيد. وده بقى ياخدنا لجو جارجري النقيض تماما، يعني راجل طيب وهادي ومسالم جدا، جسمه قوي زي هرقل زي ما بيب بيقول، بس في نفس الوقت ضعيف قوي قدام مراته. علاقتهم ببعض بيب وجو دي حتة تانية خالص، صحاب سر زي ما بنقول.
فعلا هو حاول يحذر لما أخته كانت جاية ومعاها تاكلر، بس هل نقدر نقول إن هدوءه ده أو سلبيته دي ضعفه خلاص، ولا ممكن تكون يعني طريقة تعايش؟
ممكن جدا تكون طريقة تعايش وبقاء. هو بيحاول يحمي بيب بطريقته بهدوءه ده، بس في الآخر هو نفسه ما بيسلمش من العقاب برضه. وده يمكن بيوصل رسالة لبيب أقوى كمان، إن حتى القوة دي مش بتحمي. شفنا ده في موقف مية القطران.
الموقف ده صعب قوي، لما بيحاول يخبي حتة العيش في رجل بنطلونه عشان السجين. جو لاحظ بطيبته إن الواد مش بياكل، بس هي أخته قلبت الموضوع لكارثة. خبطت راس جو في الحيطة وشربتهم هما الاتنين مية القطران، الخليط الفظيع ده اللي كان زي عقاب متغطي بغطا العلاج. اللحظة دي بتحسسك قد إيه بيب كان محاصر ومخنوق.
تماما. وهنا بنشوف الخوف والسر بيعملوا إيه في نفسية طفل صغير. بيب مش نفس خايف من أخته أو من السجين اللي قبله، لأ، ده بقى خايف من نفسه، خايف من فكرة السرقة اللي هيعملها، ومن ضميره اللي هو نفسه بيقول عليه شيء فظيع. الخوف هنا بقى هو اللي بيحركه وبيخليه وحيد قوي بسره ده.
والتوتر بيزيد لأن كل ده بيحصل ليلة الكريسماس، يعني وقت احتفال وكده، وفجأة هيسمعوا صوت المدافع، انذار بهروب مساجين تانيين من الهالكس. واخته بقى تزود الطين بلة، تشرح له ان الهالكس دي سفن سجن في المستنقعات، وان اللي فيها دول قتلة وحرامية ومزورين وكل حاجة وحشة. وبتقول له ان الناس دي دايما بتبدأ بسؤال الأسئلة. تخيل إحساس بيبو هو بيسمع ده، وهو أصلا طول الوقت بيسأل وكمان رايح يسرق.
فعلا كل كلمة بتتقال كانت بتزود الرعب جواه، كأن الدنيا كلها عارفة سره وهتكشفه.
ومع الفجر الخوف ده وصل لآخره. بيب بيتسحب للمطبخ، بيسرق أكل للسجين، عيش وقشرة جبنة ونص برطمان لحمة مفرومة وشوية براندي، حتى فطيرة لحم الخنزير بتاعت الكريسماس اللي متشالة مخصوص، وكمان مبرد حديد من ورشة جو. وهو بيعمل كل ده حاسس يعني ان الحيطان نفسها بتصرخ في ايشه الحرامي. المشهد مرسوم ببراعة بصراحة.
مشهد السرقة ده هو يعني تجسيد للخوف اللي مسيطر عليه. هو تقريبا مش بيسرق بإرادته قد ما هو مرعوب من اللي ممكن يحصل لو ما نفذش وعده للسجين.
يبقى الفصل ده مش مجرد بداية إحداث، ده تأسيس لعالم بيب النفسي كله. بيورينا ازاي الخوف والقسوة والسر شكلوا أول تجاربه في الدنيا، وازاي الاتفاق السري ده مع السجين اللي دافعه الأساسي هو الرعب هو اللي هيحرك كل خطواته بعد كده.
وجيه بقى النقطة اللي ممكن نقف عندها ونسأل، لحد فين تجارب الخوف والسرية الجامدة دي في الطفولة ممكن ترسم شكل حياتنا كلها؟ هل بنقدر فعلا نتخطاها، ولا بتفضل محفورة جوانا بتوجه اختياراتنا وقراراتنا حتى وإحنا كبار؟ سؤال بيخليه الفصل ده يتردد في دماغنا مع قصة بيب.
Okay, so picture this. You've got this lonely house out on the marshes, kind of misty, damp. And inside, there's this young boy, Pip. He lives there with his sister, who's like way older than him, maybe 20 years. Mrs. Joe Gargery. And her husband, Joe, the blacksmith, he's quieter.
Right. And the sister, Mrs. Joe.
Mm.
She has this saying, doesn't she, about bringing Pip up?
Yeah, exactly. She apparently never lets him forget she brought him up by hand. Which, I mean, it sounds a bit odd, right?
It does. It sounds loaded.
Yeah.
Especially when you get a feel for how she treats both Pip and, well, poor Joe.
Yeah. Forceful is maybe putting it mildly.
Definitely. And you see that power dynamic right from the get-go. That phrase, brought me up by hand.
Yeah.
It's not just a statement, is it? It feels like an accusation almost.
Or a debt he can never repay.
Exactly. A kind of resentment, maybe.
Yeah.
It really suggests Pip's childhood is, well, maybe not full of warmth, more about control.
It sets the scene perfectly. So today we're doing a deep dive into this particular chapter because it just lays out that early family life so vividly. We want to really get under the skin of these relationships, Pip, Mrs. Joe, Joe, and, absorb the atmosphere of his childhood through all those little details the author gives us.
It's incredibly rich with detail.
Let's start with Mrs. Joe herself. I mean, the description. Not exactly flattering, is it? Dark hair, dark eyes, skin that's always red. Pip even wonders if she scrubs herself with a nutmeg grater instead of soap.
Yeah, it's quite a picture. Tall, bony, and that apron.
Oh, the apron, always there, stiff and just bristling with pins and needles.
It's like her battle armor, isn't it? A symbol of her sort of domestic kingdom where she rules with an iron fist. Or maybe an iron pin.
Right. And she seems to think it gives her the absolute right to just constantly be, laying into Pip and Joe. Her personality just dominates the whole house.
It really does. It jumps right off the page.
And then, bless him, there's Joe, the total opposite.
Absolutely. Fair hair, those kind of vague blue eyes. Mm-hmm. The text calls them undecided.
Yeah, undecided. Mild, good-natured. Almost too much so,
Mm-hmm. And physically, he's described as this powerhouse, like a Hercules, but also weak.
It's such a great line. Strong blacksmith arms, but completely unable to handle his wife's, everything.
That contrast is crucial, I think, for understanding Pip's world. Joe is that little bit of softness of sympathy that Pip must cling to.
They're described as fellow sufferers, which says it all, really.
It does, and they have these quiet confidences. It suggests this unspoken bond between them, surviving Mrs. Joe together.
And Pip, our narrator, he's just a kid trying to figure all this out, trying to survive in this, frankly, quite unfair environment.
Yeah, he's clearly watching everything, absorbing it all, feeling it all. Even his trying to puzzle out what brought up by hand actually means shows him trying to make sense of it.
You see the world through his eyes, which makes it all the more intense.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's get into the first bit of real action, the rampage. Pip gets back from the churchyard. We find out why later.
Right.
It's important. And Mrs. Joe is apparently going ballistic. Joe sees Pip peeking in and gives him this quiet warning, like, she's been out looking for you loads of times, Pip, and she's got Tickler.
Tickler. The dreaded wax-ended cane.
Yep. That immediately tells you what kind of discipline we're talking about.
It does. And Joe's warning, it just highlights the fear that Cain inspires.
Yeah.
His description of her having rampaged out, it's almost funny, but you feel the panic underneath.
Totally. And Joe's advice is kind of pathetic. Really hide behind the door. Use the towel as a shield.
Yeah, like that's going to work.
Of course not. She bursts in, spots him instantly, and, Tickler gets used.
Ouch.
Then there's this image, which she literally throws Pip at Joe.
Wow.
And Joe, kind of relieved Pigs out of the direct line of fire, just shoves him into the chimney corner and blocks him in with his leg.
That scene just sums it all up, doesn't it? Mrs. Joe's violence, Joe's completely ineffective attempts to protect him, Pip just caught in the middle.
Yeah, there's a grim sort of comedy to it, but it's mostly just grim. So once Pip's trapped, the questions start. Where have you been, you young monkey?
You can hear the anger, but maybe a bit of worry, too.
Maybe. Pip, crying and rubbing himself, just whispers he was only at the churchyard.
And her reply is just brutal.
It is. Churchyard, if it weren't for me, you'd have been to the churchyard long ago and stayed there. Who brought you up by hand? Back to that again.
Always back to that. She wields it like a club. It's her justification for everything. Her sacrifice that Pip owes her for.
And then she asks, and why did I do it, I should like to know? Like she genuinely resents him being there.
Yeah, and then complaining about being just a blacksmith's wife. It reveals so much about her unhappiness, doesn't it? feeling trapped, maybe.
Absolutely. But while all this shouting and drama is going on, Pip's got something much bigger eating away at him inside.
Right. The secret.
Yeah, this huge secret. The man on the marshes, the other young man, the file he needs to steal, the food, the promise he was forced to make.
It's such a contrast. The noisy, sort of everyday tyranny of Mrs. Joe versus this silent, terrifying burden Pip's carrying.
The description of him seeing avenging coals in the fire, it really gets across that guilt and fear he's feeling.
It's incredibly effective. You feel the weight of it.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly. Even something simple like making bread and butter becomes this whole production with Mrs. Joe.
Oh, yeah. The description is amazing. She holds the loaf against that pin-filled apron.
I know. How do they not constantly get pins in their mouths?
Right. Then scrapes on a tiny bit of butter like she's spreading a plaster.
A plaster, yes. Then saws off this thick wedge and hacks it in two. It's so aggressive.
It just shows how controlling she is, down to the tiniest thing. And, yeah, slightly dangerous, too.
So poor Pip gets his slice, but he knows he absolutely has to save it for the man on the marshes.
His dreadful acquaintance.
Right. And the effort it takes him to secretly stash it down his trousers, it's described as quite awful, like psyching himself up for a jump off a cliff.
You really feel his panic. Meanwhile, Joe, completely oblivious, is trying to do their usual thing, right? Their little silent game of taking bites together.
Yeah, they're Freemasonry as fellow sufferers. Joe hasn't got a clue what Pip's going through.
And it makes Pip feel even worse, I think. Then Joe thinks Pip is bolting his food, swallowing it whole.
Which leads to that funny bit where Joe remembers doing the same thing as a kid.
Yeah, it's comical, but it just underlines Joe's innocence and Pip's total isolation with his secret.
Of course, the missing bread doesn't stay hidden, or at least its absence is noted.
Mrs. Joe spots it's gone.
And her solution, tar water.
Ugh, sounds disgusting. Apparently it was this notorious foul-tasting medicine back then.
Exactly, and Pip gets a whole pint forced down him while Joe gets half a pint.
Even though he did nothing.
Nope. Just because, as Mrs. Joe puts it, he had had a turn, Pip dryly notes Joe certainly did have a turn after drinking it.
Huh. Yeah, it just shows how random and unfair her punishments are. It reinforces her power and their helplessness.
So then, it's Christmas Eve. Pip's stirring the pudding, still sick with worry about his secret and the stolen food hidden upstairs.
Still carrying that weight.
Then, suddenly, boom, the sound of great guns from out on the marshes.
Ah, the signal.
Joe explains, another convict off. Escaped. Mrs. Joe just snaps, escaped, like it's the nastiest word imaginable.
Yeah, with all the charm of the tar water, the book says.
And this gets Pip wondering, what are convicts? What are the hulks they talk about?
That sound of the guns really cuts through the domestic scene, doesn't it? A reminder of the dangerous world outside. And Pip's questions show his innocence, his growing awareness.
He keeps asking, what do they do? Why are they there? And Mrs. Joe eventually just loses it.
Her patience snaps.
Completely. She basically says people go to the hulks, these prison ships, for doing terrible things. Murder, robbery, forgery, all sorts of bad.
And then the clincher.
She says they always begin by asking questions.
Oof, that must have hit Pip hard.
Right in the gut. Because he realizes, hang on, I've been asking questions, and I'm planning to steal. Suddenly, he sees himself on the path to the hulks.
It's a terrifying moment for him. Her words, meant just to shut him up, connect his secret actions directly to that grim fate. It really ramps up his fear.
So that's it. Fear wins. He has to go through with the theft. He creeps into the pantry, which is packed for Christmas, making it even worse somehow.
More to steal from.
Yeah. He grabs bread, a bit of cheese rind, some mincemeat, brandy, which he cleverly pours into an old bottle, a meat bone, and the prize. A whole pork pie. He even ducks back in for the pie specifically.
Taking a big risk there.
Huge risk. Then he sneaks into the forge, grabs a file from Joe's tools, another betrayal, puts everything back carefully, and just bolts out into the dawn mist.
That list of items makes it so real, so specific. And taking the file from Joe, that must have added another layer of guilt. He's betraying the one kind person in his life.
Definitely. His escape into the marshes isn't just physical. It's like he's stepping fully into this world of secrecy and fear.
Sets the stage perfectly for what happens next.
So wrapping up this section, what we've got is this picture of a really tough childhood, right? Dominated by this angry, resentful sister.
Mrs. Joe looms large.
A brother-in-law, Joe, who's fundamentally kind but totally unable to protect him.
Yeah, tragically ineffective in that sense.
And Pip himself, just a young boy carrying this immense, dangerous secret in an atmosphere of fear and, frankly, quite random punishment.
The power dynamics are so skewed.
Yeah.
And you see the beginnings of Pip's moral struggles, born out of fear and obligation.
It really highlights how these early experiences, the fear, the guilt, Mrs. Joe's constant oppression, are just bound to shape who Pip becomes.
Absolutely. You can see how this pressure cooker environment, combined with the secret he's forced to keep, is going to have major consequences down the line. It's the foundation for his whole character arc, really.
It really makes you think about childhood secrets, doesn't it? How they feel huge and all-consuming, and how they can intersect with everything else going on around you, pushing you in directions you never expected.
The weight of them.
Yeah. So the question lingers, what are the long-term effects going to be for Pip carrying this transgression from Christmas Eve living in that house? Definitely something to ponder after this deep dive.